They said the royal palace of Persepolis was built for the gods, but it was ruled by ghosts. By day, its marble halls blazed with light. Golden lions guarded the stairways, and the scent of cedar and myrrh clung to the air. By night, however, the palace changed. Its pillars whispered. Its corridors seemed to breathe. The king's wives and concubines, the women of the moon court, as they were called, drifted like spirits through shadowed galleries, their footsteps silent, their eyes bright with secrets they dared not speak. At the heart of the palace stood the Chamber of Shadows, a hall so vast it could swallow the echo of a man's voice. No one entered it without permission, not even the nobles. It was here that King Artabanus III, Lord of 1,000 Eyes, held his private council, and where, it was whispered, he judged the women who failed to please him. To the world, Artabanus was a god-king, the last of his line, undefeated in battle, beloved by priests. But within the walls of his harem he was a man tormented by visions. He saw betrayal everywhere, in the eyes of servants, in the tilt of a smile, even in the perfume that lingered too long on a robe. Every night before the lamps were dimmed, he demanded that his chamberlain Neferat inspect every curtain, every cup, every mirror, for mirrors, he believed, could hold whispers. It was Neferat who first saw her, the woman who would undo the empire. Her name was Anahita, a daughter of a minor noble from Ecbatana. She had been brought to the court as an offering of peace, a bride candidate for the king, though she was no more than 19. She had hair black as ink and eyes the color of storm water, not the soft brown of Persian courtiers, but a strange blue-gray hue that marked her as foreign-blooded. When she bowed before Artabanus, her voice was low and steady. She did not tremble. That alone made the king notice her. "Do you know what happens to those who stand in my presence without fear?" he asked her that first night. His tone was not kind. Anahita raised her gaze to meet his. "They have already lost everything worth fearing for," she said simply. The court fell silent. Artabanus smiled, not in pleasure but in curiosity. For the first time in months he felt awake. In the nights that followed, Anahita was assigned to the moon court, where the king's favored women lived. It was a prison disguised as paradise. Silk cushions, gold fountains, silver trays of wine, and invisible eyes watching every breath. The women competed not just for affection but for survival. To fall from favor was to vanish, quietly, efficiently, without a sound. Among them ruled Queen Astyra, the king's chief consort. Her beauty was legendary, her cruelty more so. She had survived 3 purges and countless rivals, and she wore her smile like a blade. When she heard of the newcomer from Ecbatana, she sent her a gift, a silver comb, and a note written in her own hand. Even the brightest star burns away under the sun. Anahita understood the warning. But she did not fear it. She studied the palace, its corridors, its servants, the way the guards shifted with the changing of the moon. And soon she discovered what few dared to whisper aloud, that every night the king disappeared from his bedchamber, not to visit a woman, but to kneel before a hidden door beneath the Chamber of Shadows. Some said he prayed there. Others said he spoke to the spirits of his ancestors. But Anahita, whose father had been a scholar of ancient rites, recognized the symbols carved into the chamber floor, the sigil of Mithra, god of covenants and hidden truth. One evening, while the palace slept, she followed the king's shadow. Barefoot, cloaked in a servant's veil, she descended the marble stairs and pressed her ear to the bronze door. She heard nothing at first. Then a voice, low and trembling. "They wait beneath the stone," the king whispered. "They demand remembrance. They demand her name." Anahita's heart stilled. Who was she? Before she could move, a hand seized her shoulder. It was Neferat. "What are you doing here?" he hissed. His face was pale, his grip firm, but she saw in his eyes something unexpected. Fear, not anger. "I was lost," she said calmly. "The halls confuse me." "Lies," he whispered. "You must forget what you saw, or you will die before dawn." He released her and vanished into the dark. But Anahita did not forget. The next morning the palace woke to thunder. Artabanus had declared a festival, 7 nights of feasting, music, and offerings to Mithra. The moon court was ordered to perform for the guests, each woman dressed as a goddess from the old myths. It was a spectacle of wealth and devotion, and a cage of glass. As the musicians played, the king's eyes sought Anahita. She was dressed as Anahid, the goddess of rivers, her robe of pale blue silk shimmering like water. When she danced, the lamp seemed to bend toward her. Even Astyra's smile faltered. But what no one saw was the small charm hidden beneath her sleeve. A fragment of obsidian carved with the same sigil she'd seen beneath the Chamber of Shadows. Her father had once told her that Mithra's symbols could reveal truth, or destroy those who lied beneath his gaze. That night, when the festival ended and the palace slept, she slipped again into the forbidden hall. She placed the charm on the stone floor and whispered, "Let the truth rise." The air grew cold. The torches dimmed. The bronze door shuddered and opened a hand's breadth. Behind it she saw light, pale and flickering, and the faint outline of a woman carved in stone, her face eerily familiar. It was Astyra. Before Anahita could draw breath, a voice spoke behind her. "Now you see why I cannot sleep." The king stood in the doorway, his face half in shadow. "She died 2 years ago," he said softly, "and yet she stands here every night. The priests tell me it is a sign, Theri, that her soul guards me. But I know the truth. I know what I did." Anahita turned. "You killed her." Artabanus's eyes glinted with pain, or madness. "No, I loved her so much that I could not bear her to love another." He stepped closer. "And now I see her again when you—" Anahita felt the air tighten around her. In that moment she understood her fate. The palace was not haunted by ghosts. It was haunted by guilt. That night a scream echoed through Persepolis, and by dawn the Chamber of Shadows was sealed. The king declared that a thief had been executed for trespassing. But the women of the Moon Court whispered otherwise, that a new shadow had joined the old ones beneath the stone. Only Neferat knew the truth, and he would carry it like a curse. Morning came to Persepolis with the smell of rain and iron. The guard said it was a thief who had died in the night, a servant caught wandering too near the royal chambers. But no one believed it. Servants vanished often in the palace, yes, but never with such silence, such efficiency. And never had the king himself ordered the Chamber of Shadows to be sealed with molten bronze before sunrise. The Moon Court knew better. They always did. The women sat behind latticed windows, their faces pale as marble, whispering what no one dared speak aloud. Another has joined the queen beneath the stone. Only Neferat, the king's chamberlain, knew the truth of what had happened, or enough of it to lose his sleep. He had found the veil that morning torn and scorched, lying near the sealed bronze door. The king said nothing. He only commanded that the musicians play louder that evening, that the gardens be lit with 1,000 lamps, and that every trace of the girl from Ecbatana be erased, her name struck from records, her chamber emptied before noon. "Let no one speak of her again," Artabanus had said, his tone as calm as stone, but Neferat saw the tremor in his hand. He knew then that the king was afraid, not of rebellion or gods, but of himself. That night, while the Moon Court gathered to perform for visiting nobles, Neferat walked alone to the edge of the terrace where the palace dropped away into the desert. The stars were veiled behind clouds. The torches hissed in the wind. From below came the faint sound of the city, the markets closing, the dogs howling at unseen things. He had served Artabanus since boyhood, had watched him rise from a prince beloved to a ruler feared. He had seen what power did to men, how it twisted their hearts into shapes they no longer recognized. Yet never had he feared his king until now, for Artabanus had begun to dream of ghosts. Every dawn Neferat found the king in the Chamber of Shadows, kneeling before the sealed bronze door. He spoke to it softly as one might to a lover. Sometimes he would laugh, sometimes he would weep, and once Neferat swore he heard a woman's voice answer him, faint, distant, like wind through a tomb. 3 days after Anahita's disappearance, the palace received a messenger from Susa, a man bearing a ring carved with the royal seal. His name was Vardanus, captain of the immortals and cousin to the late Queen Astyra. "I have come to see my cousin's resting place," Vardanus told the guards, "and to speak of matters the king has long avoided." When the words reached Artabanus, his face darkened. "She has no resting place," he said. "Her ashes were given to the winds as she wished." Vardanus smiled thinly. "That is strange. for I have seen her face carved in stone beneath your palace." The court froze. Only Neferat dared to breathe. "How do you know this?" the king asked quietly. "Because the sculptor who made her likeness came to me trembling, saying he had been ordered to carve a dead woman as though she yet lived. He begged me to protect him from your wrath." Artabanes rose from his throne. "You speak treason." "I speak truth," said Vardanes. "And truth is the one God even kings cannot silence." That evening Artabanes summoned Neferat in secret. "They dig beneath the floor," he said, pacing like a caged lion. "They think I do not know, but I hear them at night. The priests, the guards, even the eunuchs. They whisper that I murdered her, that I am cursed." Neferat hesitated. "My lord, if you would only rest." "Rest?" The king turned, eyes blazing. "How can I rest when I see her every night? She stands beside my bed. She touches my hand and asks me why I buried her heart beneath the stone." Neferat said nothing. There was no answer safe enough to give. The king pressed a hand to his temple. "She loved another," he murmured. "Do you know that, Neferat? She loved my brother. The same blood, the same face, yet she chose him." He sank to his knees. "So I made her eternal. I thought if her image could not fade, her love could not either. But now she will not leave me. Not even death will take her." Neferat's blood ran cold. "My king," he whispered, "what do you mean, you made her eternal?" Artabanes looked up slowly, and for the first time, Neferat saw what the court had begun to fear. Madness not of rage, but of love twisted too far. That night, while the city slept, Neferat went to the forbidden hall. The bronze door was cold beneath his hand. He pressed his ear to it, and what he heard chilled him, a soft sound like stone breathing. Then faintly, a whisper, "Neferat." He stepped back in terror. The voice was unmistakable, soft, steady, filled with the calm of a queen who never lost her composure. "Neferat, free me." The chamberlain fled. He did not stop until he reached the upper court, gasping for air like a drowning man. But even as he ran, her voice followed, not through walls but within his mind. By dawn, the palace had changed. The women of the moon court were forbidden to leave their quarters. Guards lined every corridor. The bronze door beneath the chamber of shadows was no longer sealed. It was open. And upon the king's throne, carved in ivory and gold, lay a single object, a comb of silver, glinting faintly in the torchlight. The same comb Queen Astyra had once sent to the girl from Ecbatana. Neferat stared at it, his heart pounding. The air smelled of myrrh and lilies, Astyra's scent. Then he saw her. She was standing at the far end of the hall, veiled in white, her movements fluid and silent. For an instant he thought she was alive, until she stepped into the light. Her eyes were pale stone, her skin shimmered with dust, and when she smiled it was with the sadness of centuries. "Tell him," she whispered. "Tell the king that I forgive him." Then she was gone, the air collapsing where she had stood. Neferat fell to his knees. He understood now that the queen was not haunting the palace. The palace itself had become her grave. The walls, the marble, even the mirrors remembered her. The king had built her a tomb disguised as a home, and now that tomb was breathing her name. The following night, Artabanes gathered his court for a feast. The lamps burned low and the wine flowed like blood. The musicians played songs of victory, but their hands trembled. The king sat motionless at the head of the table, staring into nothing. "Tell me," he said at last, "how long can a man live when his love will not die?" No one answered. Then, without warning, he began to laugh, softly at first, then louder until the sound filled the hall like thunder. He struck the table with his fist, spilling wine across the marble. "They think I am cursed," he said, "but it is she who is cursed. She would not obey the laws of the dead." He stood, his cloak falling away, his eyes wild with tears. "Let them see her. Let them see what love truly means." The guards moved to restrain him, but he threw them aside. He strode toward the chamber of shadows, the court trailing in terror behind. With a cry, he flung open the bronze door. Inside, the torches flared to life on their own. The air shimmered. And there she was, Queen Astyra, standing upon the altar, her stone form glowing faintly with the light of 1,000 candles. Artabanes fell to his knees. "You see?" he shouted. "She lives. She lives because I loved her enough to keep her so." The court recoiled. None dared to move, and then before their eyes the queen's statue cracked. A single tear of dust fell from her cheek. When it touched the floor, the lights went out. When dawn came, the chamber of shadows was empty. The king was gone. In his place lay 2 silver combs crossed upon the floor, one for the queen, one for the girl from Ecbatana. From that day forward, no one entered that hall again. But at night the servants swore they heard voices, a man's and a woman's whispering softly beneath the stone, forever bound by love too dark to die. When dawn broke over Persepolis, the sun touched marble that had forgotten how to shine. The king was gone. The bronze doors of the chamber of shadows stood open, and the air that drifted from them smelled not of death but of lilies and dust. Inside nothing remained, no statue, no throne, only the faint outline of 2 figures pressed into the stone, as if the earth itself had swallowed them in an embrace. Neferat knelt there long after the guards had fled. He felt the chill seep into his bones. So this is how empires die, he thought. Not with rebellion, but with a whisper. By noon, the city's priest declared a sacred silence. No bells rang. No prayers rose. The palace gates were sealed, and the royal scribes announced that King Artabanus III had entered communion with the divine, flamed into a lie so elaborate that even truth bowed before it. Neferat was named regent, until the king's return. He knew that meant until the day they find his bones, or someone else takes the throne. The moon court moved through the halls like ghosts, wrapped in silk. Without the king's gaze, their beauty became irrelevant, their voices lost purpose. Yet they watched Neferat with strange fascination. A man who once served, now giving orders. A eunuch, now the keeper of royal secrets. Queen Astira's apartments were sealed, her perfumes locked away. But at night the scent returned, subtle, persistent, drifting through corridors like a memory too proud to fade. On the 7th night after the king's vanishing, Neferat dreamed. He stood in the chamber of shadows. The walls bled light. Before him, 2 mirrors faced each other endlessly, reflecting worlds within worlds. In one reflection, he saw himself older, hollow-eyed. In the other, he saw the queen smiling. "You guard what you do not own," she said, "and you love what you must forget." When he woke, the air in his chamber was cold. A single silver comb lay upon his pillow. The next morning, a messenger arrived from Babylon, Prince Darius, nephew to the missing king. He came with a retinue of scholars, soldiers, and spies disguised as poets. His voice was courteous, his eyes calculating. "My uncle's death, or ascension as you call it, has left Persia rudderless," Darius said, standing before the regent. "Someone must steer the empire before it breaks itself upon the rocks." Neferat bowed. "Then you would claim the throne?" "I would claim stability," the prince replied. "But before I do, I must know what truly happened beneath this palace." The priests whisper that the king consorted with shadows. "Tell me, Chamberlain, what did you see?" Neferat's hand tightened on his staff. "I saw devotion that became disease. I saw love mistaken for immortality. And I saw a man consumed by the reflection of his own desire." Darius studied him a long time. "Then you saw yourself." Neferat did not answer. Rumors spread through Persepolis. Some said the king had descended into the underworld to join his queen. Others claimed he had fled east to build a new city of glass. But the women of the moon court whispered something else, that the chamberlain had replaced him. That Neferat now spoke to the same spirits who once haunted the king, and perhaps he did. For each night he returned to the chamber of shadows. He would light a single lamp and speak softly into the dark. "If you still hear me, grant me wisdom. Let your madness not be mine." At first there was only silence. Then, one night, a breath of air brushed his face and a voice answered, "Wisdom is a curse that keeps you alive." The flame flickered blue. In its light he saw the faint shape of a woman's hand pressed against the wall. It was slender, graceful, and made of stone. By the time spring ripened into summer, Prince Darius had begun to move pieces upon the board. Governors pledged allegiance to him. Armies assembled quietly beyond the Zagros Mountains. The regent's seal was still respected, but his power thinned with each new sunrise. "Join me," Darius said one evening, standing at the same terrace where Neferat had once watched the city sleep. "You have the loyalty of the palace. I have the loyalty of the sword. Together we can rule." Neferat looked over the balustrade to the long shadow the palace cast over the city. "Rule," he murmured. "This place does not allow rule." It only devours those who think they possess it, the prince smiled. Then better to be devoured as a king than to fade as a servant. He left that night for the military camp in Pasargadae. That same hour, the moon court awoke to screams. Neferat ran through corridors lit by trembling torches. The scent of lilies, again always lilies, led him to Astira's sealed chamber. The bronze doors hung open. Inside the mirrors had shattered, their shards glittering like frozen tears. Upon the bed lay one of the king's former concubines, eyes wide, her mouth filled with dust. On the wall above her was written, in a hand that trembled yet remained elegant, "She still rules." The guards found no intruder. The windows were locked from within. When Neferat returned to his rooms, he found the second silver comb on his table, crossed with the first. He sank into the chair, hands shaking. "What do you want of me?" he whispered. The answer came from nowhere and everywhere at once. To remember. The following day, Neferat ordered all mirrors in the palace to be removed. But it was too late. The moon court had already begun to dream of her, the queen walking among them, her eyes made of light. One servant claimed he saw her reflection in the fountain at dawn. Another said she spoke through the walls, asking after the chamberlain by name. Fear turned to fascination. The women began leaving offerings at her sealed door, pearls, hairpins, verses written in rose ink. They called her the undying bride, and Neferat, to his shame, found himself visiting her and thought more often than he prayed. Each time he tried to speak to the gods, her face rose before him, calm, beautiful, merciless. He began to write letters to her. At first they were apologies, then confessions, then love. He hid them beneath a loose tile in the floor. Yet one morning he woke to find them gone, and in their place, a single sheet of parchment bearing her hand. The living envy the dead, but the dead envy memory. Weeks later, word arrived that Prince Darius had declared himself king in Pasargadae. The priests were divided, the nobles uncertain. Neferat convened the council of elders to decide whether to yield or resist. That night, before the council met, he returned once more to the Chamber of Shadows. The bronze doors had begun to rust. Inside, the air pulsed faintly as if breathing. He lit the lamp. The light spread across the walls, and there, in the stone, two figures again appeared. But now they were not embracing. They were turning away from each other, their outlines fading. "You are leaving me," he whispered, a voice soft as wind. "You are forgetting me." "No," he said, "I have kept your secret." "I have kept you." "Then keep me one last time," the voice said. "When they ask who ruled Persepolis, say it was love." The lamp went out. When Neferat emerged, the council was waiting. His face was pale, his hands unsteady, but his voice clear. "The king is dead," he said, "and no mortal shall take his place. We are a house haunted by devotion. Let the line end here." Some called him a traitor, others a prophet. The guards moved to seize him, but Neferat only smiled, a strange, peaceful smile that made even the boldest hesitate. That night, he walked alone through the palace one last time. He passed the sleeping women, the darkened fountains, the silent mirrors stacked in the storerooms. At dawn, the servants found his robes folded neatly beside the bronze door, his seal ring resting atop them. Of Neferat himself there was no trace, except for a faint scent of lilies that lingered long after. The coronation of Darius was neither celebrated nor mourned. It simply happened, as though the empire itself had sighed and given up resisting the inevitable. In the grand hall of Persepolis, beneath frescoes of lions devouring bulls and angels holding rings of eternity, Darius placed the crown of fire upon his head. The priest murmured blessings in trembling voices. The nobles knelt because it was safer than standing. Outside, the wind carried sand into the courtyards, whispering through the columns like forgotten prayers. Darius looked down from the throne that had devoured his uncle. The air seemed heavy, almost watchful. Somewhere, far beneath the marble, something breathed. When he first arrived, Darius believed the palace haunted only by memory. He soon learned otherwise. At night, he heard footsteps pacing the empty corridors. The mirrors fogged without cause. The faint perfume of lilies drifted through sealed chambers. And once, as he passed the Chamber of Shadows, he thought he saw a figure kneeling before its bronze doors. A man cloaked in black, his face turned toward the earth. But when Darius drew near, there was nothing. He told himself it was fatigue. He told himself the past could not touch him. But every dawn, the same word echoed in his dreams. Remember, to govern Darius needed loyalty. To gain loyalty, he needed fear. He began his reign by ordering the priest to open the royal archives, the sealed records of the reign of Artabanus III. He wanted truth, or at least the illusion of it. What they found was worse than silence. Scrolls missing entire chapters, names erased. The records of the queen's death replaced by hymns to Mithra. Even the harem rosters once meticulously kept had blank lines where a name should be. One servant whispered. The ghosts took the ink. Darius burned the archives that night, but burning paper does not burn what lives in walls. Among the moon court remained a handful of women too old to leave, too forgotten to be dismissed. One of them, Lady Sira, had once been a favorite of King Artabanus. Her beauty had faded, but her memory had not. When Darius summoned her, she came limping, veiled in white silk yellowed with age. You served my uncle, Darius said. Tell me what happened to him. Sira bowed her head. He sought eternity, my lord, and eternity found him. He frowned. I ask for truth, not riddles. Truth is the cruelest riddle, she said softly. He loved a woman who belonged to no one. When she was taken from him, he tried to build her again from stone. But stone remembers what it once was, earth, and earth remembers the dead. She lifted her veil. Her eyes were hollow, pupils ringed with gray. He thought he had trapped her spirit beneath the chamber of shadows. But love is not a prisoner, my king. It is a mirror. When he looked upon her image, he saw only himself. And what he saw destroyed him. Darius dismissed her, disturbed. But her words followed him like smoke. That night he ordered the chamber of shadows unsealed. The bronze doors opened with a groan that sounded like a sigh. The torchlight revealed nothing unusual, just stone, dust, and the faint outline of two figures carved into the floor, worn almost smooth. And yet, there was something in the air. A heaviness, a warmth like breath. He stepped forward. The walls glittered faintly. The carvings seemed to shimmer as if covered with a thin film of water. He touched one and felt the stone pulse. For a heartbeat, the room smelled of myrrh and river water. He turned sharply. Behind him stood a woman in blue. Her eyes were gray, her face calm. She did not speak. He took a step back. Who are you? She tilted her head. Do you not recognize your own blood? Then she was gone, leaving only the whisper of silk and the echo of his heartbeat. The following morning, Darius summoned the high priest of Mithra, an ancient man named Zurvan, whose face was wrinkled like parchment. The chamber of shadows is alive, Darius said. I want it destroyed. Zurvan bowed low. It cannot be destroyed, Majesty. It was built upon the foundation of the queen's tomb. The stones are fused with her ashes. To break them is to unmake the palace itself. Darius slammed his fist upon the table. Then I will burn the entire palace. The priest looked up, eyes sad. And who will you burn when the walls begin to whisper your name? That evening, a storm swept through the desert, hammering the palace with wind and rain. Darius sat alone in the throne room, watching the torches struggle against the draft. He felt the weight of the crown. It was not gold. It was dust. He remembered the stories told in his youth, that every Persian king was born under the same star, and that star burned brighter each time one of them fell. He wondered if his would burn tonight. The doors creaked open. Lady Sira entered carrying a small chest. I bring you a gift, Majesty, she said. Inside the chest lay 2 silver combs, crossed. He looked up sharply. Where did you find these? In the chamberlain's quarters, she said. Before he vanished, Darius frowned. Neferat left nothing. He left these, Sira whispered. And a message carved beneath the floor. When love is bound to stone, the living become its servants. The king stared at the combs. For a moment, he thought he heard laughter. A woman's laughter, faint and distant, echoing through the rain. He shut the chest and ordered it locked away. But when dawn came, the chest was gone. In the weeks that followed, Darius's reign grew darker. He forbade mention of his uncle or the queen. He replaced the moon court with new women, foreigners, dancers, priestesses from distant lands. Yet the old whispers returned that none of them lasted long. Some left in silence, others simply disappeared. The palace servants began to mark their doors with salt. The guards refused to patrol the lower halls after midnight, and one night, as Darius lay half asleep, he felt a hand brush his hair. Gentle, cool, and unmistakably real. He turned, and there she was again, the woman in blue. "Why do you haunt me?" he demanded. She smiled faintly. "I do not haunt. I remember." Her fingers touched his cheek. "And so will you." Then she leaned close and whispered a name he did not recognize, a name that made his heart stop. When he woke, the bed beside him was covered in dust shaped like the impression of a body. By midwinter, Persepolis had become a mausoleum of silence. No laughter, no music. Even the fountain seemed afraid to sing. Darius held court less and less. He spent his nights wandering the corridors, touching the cold marble walls as if searching for a pulse. One morning, he ordered the sculptors to carve a statue of a woman, tall, veiled, faceless. "She will stand beside the throne," he said, "to remind me that power is never alone." When they asked what name to inscribe, he answered, "Anahita." The sculptors obeyed. But the day the statue was unveiled, one of them screamed, for beneath the veil, where the face should have been blank, 2 gray eyes had appeared, smooth, perfect, carved by no hand they knew. That night, the palace burned. The flames began in the lower halls where the bronze doors once stood. They climbed the pillars, licking at the painted ceilings, turning lions and angels into smoke. When the fire reached the throne room, Darius did not flee. He stood before the veiled statue and whispered, "If you remember me, take me with you." The ceiling collapsed. By dawn, Persepolis was ash, and yet when the sun rose, travelers passing the ruins swore they saw 2 figures standing in the smoke, one crowned, one veiled, hand in hand watching the horizon. For 1,000 years the winds kept their silence. They moved through the valleys where Persepolis had once gleamed like the sun's reflection, scattering the bones of marble and memory into the sand. The empire that had ruled half the world was now a whisper, a rumor told by traders, a warning sung by nomads around their desert fires. They said a curse slept beneath the ruins. They said that those who entered the queen's chamber would see the faces of the damned reflected in their torches. But still they came, because men are drawn to forbidden things the way the desert is drawn to rain. The man who first broke the silence was named Ardashir of Susa, a scholar, a dreamer, and a thief of histories. He arrived with 7 men and a single purpose, to find the lost crown of Darius, the Prince of Dust. The world had forgotten his name, but Ardashir had not. In the ruins of Persepolis, he believed, lay the proof that kings were not merely mortal, that love could conquer even the judgment of gods. He wrote in his journal, "If I find the tomb of Darius, I will find her. If I find her, I will understand why men burn cities for a single touch." On the 3rd night of their excavation, they uncovered the Chamber of Shadows. The bronze doors still stood half buried, blackened by fire yet unbroken. One of the laborers refused to approach. "The earth hums here," he said, his voice trembling. "It breathes," Ardashir laughed. "That is wind, not breath." But when he placed his palm upon the door, he felt it, a faint vibration like a heartbeat far beneath the stone. He smiled. "It waits." The next morning they pried open the door. Dust poured out like smoke, and with it came the faint scent of lilies, the same flower once favored by the queen. The chamber was smaller than Ardashir expected, a circular room, its walls covered in carvings of a veiled woman beside a crowned man. At the center stood the veiled statue, still upright, untouched by time. It should have been stone gray, yet in the torchlight, its surface shimmered faintly blue. Ardashir approached, his steps echoing. "Anahita," he whispered. One of the men murmured, "Who is she?" He smiled without turning. The last secret of kings. That night he dreamed of a palace reborn in light. He saw marble halls gleaming as they once had, the fountains flowing, the veiled statue no longer still but breathing. She turned to him, her gray eyes alive. "Why do you disturb our rest?" she asked. "I seek truth," he said. Her lips curved in a sorrowful smile. "Truth is not found in graves." When he woke, the torches had burned low and one of his men was gone. Only a circle of ash remained where he had slept. By dawn, 2 more had vanished. The survivors argued, terrified. Some swore they heard singing from the chamber below. Others said the statue moved when no one watched. Ardashir refused to flee. "This is no curse," he said. "This is history remembering itself." But he wrote in his journal that night, "Her eyes followed me today. I know what I saw. On the 6th night, a storm rolled over the desert. Lightning illuminated the ruins like the skeleton of a god." Ardashir stood before the statue once more, soaked in rain and obsession. "Show yourself," he demanded. "If spirit there is, let it speak." The thunder answered first. Then came silence, and then a whisper. "Remember?" He looked up. The statue's veil was stirring, though there was no wind. Beneath it, faintly, the outline of a face emerged, not stone, but flesh. Ardashir stumbled backward, heart pounding. The air smelled again of lilies and smoke. He fell to his knees. "What are you?" A voice spoke through the chamber, soft yet vast. "I am what remains when desire refuses to die." The torches went out. When the storm ended, the ruins were silent once more. Days later, a caravan passing through found the excavation site empty, tents torn, tools scattered, journals buried in sand. Only one thing remained untouched, the veiled statue, its eyes now open. Decades passed. The story of Ardashir became another legend, folded into the myths of Persepolis. But in every empire that rose after, echoes of the moon court returned. In Babylon's hanging gardens, queens whispered to marble lovers. In Rome's hidden villas, emperors built chambers to mirror their dreams, and in every tale, there was always a veiled woman, and silent, beautiful, eternal. Some said she was a goddess, some said she was punishment, and some, in their most private moments, whispered that she was simply memory itself. Centuries later, the ruins of Persepolis would be rediscovered once again, this time by foreign scholars, armed not with torches but cameras, notebooks, and skepticism. Among them was Dr. Layla Farnood, an archaeologist born of Persian soil but educated in the West. She had grown up on the legends, hearing her grandmother say, "The queen still waits beneath the stones." Now she stood on the same sands, unearthing the same cursed doors. When she first saw the Chamber of Shadows, her breath caught. It was exactly as the stories described, circular, cold, and crowned by a single veiled figure. Her team began cataloging the carvings. But Layla noticed something none of the others did. Faint marks along the statue's wrist, like inscriptions too shallow to read. When the light struck at a certain angle, she could just make out the words, "To remember is to remain." That night, she stayed behind after the others had left. She set a single lamp before the statue and studied its face. From beneath the veil, two gray eyes glimmered faintly in the dim light. Layla whispered, "Are you real?" The air trembled. Then faintly, so faintly she thought it might have been her imagination, a voice replied, "I am what you will become." The lamp flickered out. In the morning, the camp was deserted, no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away, only the desert and the statue standing as it always had. Except now, beneath the veil, a faint smile curved the stone lips. The dig was abandoned. The government sealed the site. Reports called it an unexplained disappearance. But those who lived near the desert swore that on windless nights, they heard laughter drifting from beneath the dunes. The ruins of Persepolis still stand. Tourists walk its avenues, snapping photographs, marveling at the carvings of kings and gods. None of them know what sleeps beneath their feet. Sometimes, at sunset, the last light catches the broken pillars just so, and a shimmer like blue silk passes over the stone. A guide might joke, "That's the queen's ghost," and the tourists laugh. But if one lingers after dark, when the desert cools and the stars return, they may hear a voice behind them whisper, softly, almost tenderly, "To remember is to remain." The ruins of Persepolis never sleep. They shimmer at dawn like embers remembering fire. They whisper at night like a grave remembering a name. After the disappearance of Dr. Layla Farnood and her team, the government sealed the entire site. No press, no tourist, no explanations, yet secrecy breeds fascination. Whispers began again. Online, in academic circles, in the smoky corners of Tehran cafes. Some said Layla had discovered an ancient mirror buried beneath the Chamber of Shadows, one that reflected not the viewer's face, but the truth of their heart. Others claimed she had found the ashes of the queen herself, preserved in a crystal urn. No one could prove anything, But one thing was certain. A month after the dig, the satellite images of the area showed something strange, a faint circular glow beneath the sand, as if the ruins had begun to breathe again. In the old museum at Shiraz, among relics of Persia's fallen dynasties, a single crate arrived without record of shipment. The curator, Professor Rezamani, found it waiting in the basement, marked only with one word burned into the wood, Anahita. Inside was a small marble fragment, a piece of a statue's face. Pale as bone, the curve of a woman's mouth. Reza, fascinated, placed it on display, unaware of what it carried. Within a week, the lights in the museum began to flicker. The temperature dropped at sunset. Visitors swore they heard humming near the exhibit, a low, rhythmic sound almost like breathing. One night, Reza stayed late, studying the fragment by lamplight. He leaned close and saw, beneath the marble surface, a shimmer, as though something moved within. He rubbed his eyes, stepped back. The reflection in the glass case shifted. For a moment, he saw not himself but a veiled woman standing where he stood, her gray eyes calm, her lips forming silent words. He stumbled backward, heart racing. Who are you?" The glass fogged as though exhaled upon from the inside. And upon that mist a single word appeared, traced by an unseen hand. "Remember." Then the light shattered. By morning, the fragment was gone. Only a faint circle of ash remained inside the case. The museum was closed for repairs. Reza was never seen again. That same week, across the country, reports emerged. A pale woman seen walking through empty streets at dawn, her veil trailing dust, a voice whispering in abandoned corridors, and always the scent of lilies in the air. Most dismissed it as superstition, but a few, the scholars, who had read Ardashir's lost journals, kinda knew better. They said, "The veil has returned." Far away in London, a young historian named Nadia Farnood watched the news in disbelief. Her mother, Layla, had disappeared 3 years earlier in the Persepolis dig. Now the same word, Anahita, had appeared on an unmarked shipment connected to her mother's research. Nadia packed her bags. Within a week, she was standing in the desert her mother had once vanished into. The ruins were silent. Wind rolled over the dunes like a sigh. The air tasted of dust and memory. Nadia found the sealed entrance to the Chamber of Shadows beneath layers of sand and concrete. She brushed her hand across the stone. Her flashlight flickered. For a moment she thought she saw movement beneath the glassy surface of the wall. Like water. She whispered, "Mother?" The echo answered, "Remember." She froze. The voice was not her mother's, it was older, softer, endless. Inside the chamber, the veiled statue still stood. The air was colder than it should have been. Nadia set her recorder on the ground, her voice trembling. Day 1, Chamber of Shadows. The statue remains intact. Her voice stopped. The recorder caught something else, a faint hum. Then another voice, layered beneath her own, speaking in ancient Persian. "To remember is to remain." The light died. When she woke, Nadia found herself lying at the statue's feet. Her flashlight still flickered beside her. She rose unsteadily. The veil on the statue's face was no longer still. It rippled as if stirred by breath. Her pulse thundered. "Who are you?" The air shimmered. The stone veil lifted slightly, revealing gray eyes that seemed both alive and carved from eternity. "I am all that love could not bury," the voice said. "I am what your blood remembers." Nadia felt tears sting her eyes. "My mother, she was here." "Did you take her?" The statue tilted its head. She saw. And in seeing she became. Nadia took a step back, heart racing. "What do you mean?" The voice softened. "The living are merely the shapes the past chooses to wear." Then, the veil fell. Outside, a storm began to gather. The desert wind screamed across the ruins, carrying dust, ash, and the faint perfume of lilies. From a distance, the tourists' camp saw a flash of blue light erupt from beneath the dunes, a pulse that rolled outward like a heartbeat. When the storm cleared, the ruins were buried once more. No trace of Nadia Farnood was ever found. Months later, a new exhibit opened quietly in the Louvre, Echoes of Persepolis. Among its pieces was an anonymous donation, a veiled marble bust with lifelike gray eyes. The plaque beneath it read simply, "Queen of Shadows." 5th century BCE, provenance unknown. Visitors often remarked that the statue seemed to follow them with its gaze. A few claimed it whispered as they passed, a voice too faint to be certain, yet too human to ignore. On the closing night of the exhibition, the curator locked the gallery and turned off the lights, but security cameras kept rolling. At 2:14 a.m., the footage showed the statue's veil moving. The marble eyes blinked once. The camera static filled the screen, and then a single frame appeared. A woman, veiled, standing among the empty halls, staring straight into the lens. Then the screen went black. At dawn, the statue was gone. In its place was a small bronze plaque etched with 3 words in ancient Persian: "To remember is to remain." And across the marble floor, where dust caught the morning light, were footprints, faint, feminine, leading toward the exit. Now, in the modern age, Persepolis is still sealed. The government denies all rumors, but satellite images continue to show something impossible. A faint, shifting glow beneath the desert floor, like the heartbeat of something vast and waiting. Locals say the desert hums at night. They say if you sleep too close, you'll dream of a veiled woman whispering secrets the world was never meant to hear. Some wake screaming, some wake weeping, and some never wake at all. Epilogue. In a private collection somewhere in Europe, an anonymous patron keeps a single marble fragment under glass, the curve of a woman's mouth, faintly smiling. Every full moon it fogs with breath, and every dawn, the whisper returns: "To remember is to remain."